Hello and welcome to the CBMM and Partners Mobility Leadership Debate. The mobility sector is undergoing radical change and transformation. Automotive product makers and mobility service providers are responding to heightened challenges, new demands, new technologies and new players in the marketplace. Increasing electrification, the development and introduction of autonomous and AI, and a drive for sustainable technologies are all increasingly important drivers of this change. Today I'm joined by a number of recognised leaders driving and responding to these changes to discuss mobility innovations. And I suppose the biggest mobility innovation that we think of is autonomous mobility. So I'm going to chuck this out there. Alexander, 2050, what percentage of cars do you think are going to be, or vehicles are going to be autonomous?
Yeah, you're going to see a big push from insurance companies, a big push from the fleets themselves for an improved experience, a safer experience for their drivers. So integrating levels of autonomy, level 3 and level 4 autonomy with advanced driver assistance is something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to, by 2050, we anticipate that all vehicles will have elements of this, but to remove the driver completely from the truck is something that there's still a lot of work to be done. So I would be less bullish on removing the driver completely from that experience.
Lucas, as the ultimate driver, one of the greatest drivers in the world, what are your thoughts on a driverless future?
I think in the same way as he said about insurance pushing the logistics and the trucks and the vans to have automation helping the driver make the transport safer for everybody, I think the same with hypercars and supercars. I think in the near future there will be mandatory, if you buy a car with 1,000 horsepower, that there will be systems that could be as either a driver coach or a system that will help you to extract the maximum out of this hypercar.
Tom, could you outline where autonomous is now and how it's going to develop, not just for passenger vehicles but for other mobility forms and needs?
Sure, yeah. So, well, we're all aware roughly where autonomy is now. There are cars with kind of level 2, 3, that kind of ballpark. We're seeing a little more in the kind of commercial space. We're seeing, Volvo and a couple of the other manufacturers pushing autonomous trucks for bounded areas like mines. Komatsu has some for mining as well. So that's kind of where we are today. We're still at very early stages. Will we get there by 2050? Probably. But I think not just cars and vehicles, I think we'll also start to see a shift to drones and flying in autonomous drones. The technology for that is being developed today, and it will actually be easier to deploy that in many areas, many regions, than it will be to deploy level 5 autonomous cars because they don't require the same level of high definition mapping. The idea there is the transportation cost is close to zero because there's no driver to pay. There's very little fuel, very little maintenance, and these little devices go on forever. They have a long lifetime. So transportation costs are coming to zero. And of course, when transportation costs come to zero, you get all kinds of implications for things that can happen.
What are the challenges in building a new innovative brand and belief in a new product in a market where the customers, they like what they have?
Do you think they like what they have? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Well, that's the question. That's the question.
Now, it's not so that people don't want to change. We are a brand, Urban Arrow, building cargo bikes, and we have difficulty in keeping up with production because the demand is so high. So people do want to change, and they think about new ways of transportation. And it's quite obvious, maybe, if you think about the environment, if you think about health, if you think about congestion here in New York streets.
Well, Rodrigo, what are the technical demands in designing and producing high-performance autonomous vehicles?
But we see in the materials point of view, we can help in terms of, improve the safety and also bring some technology. So we've been working as well in the future of sensors, how can help this to the autonomous driving. We are learning with big OEMs as well, how we can implement it in our facilities, and also how can we develop products.
Lucas, as well as doing robo-race and being a Formula E driver, you also have a company to design and produce electric bikes and scooters. Why and how does Micromobility fit into the new mobility landscape?
2 years ago, we made a completely new bike out of steel niobium for the first time with integrated batteries inside the frame. and it's a small different philosophy with the magnetic region rear brakes and to enter the low-cost market, but we could not find suppliers to match what we needed. Either they asked for a huge volume, which we didn't have it yet, to modify their production, or we could not find the right parts.
That must be a big part of your sort of plan to take a small business from Holland and turn it into like a sustainable global business.
Holland is known for the bicycles, so that brings us one step ahead already. And then talking about steps, we think about doing business one step at a time. So we could grow much faster than we do actually, but we just enter new markets when we feel we are completely ready for it. We have sales taken care of, logistics, and service is a real important part of the deal. So we just go country by country, step by step.
Yeah.
Anyone today who wants to buy an EV, an electric car, they know that there's a supply issue, because you go to order an electric vehicle and you've got a waiting time of a couple of months typically for an electric vehicle, because they're supply constrained, because typically it's the batteries are the issue for the manufacturers. But that is going to change enormously. I saw a forecast this morning, there's 91 mega factories for batteries for electric vehicles being retooled or being built out between now and 2028, if I remember correctly. So 91 mega factories being built out between now and 2028 to meet the demand that is coming. Even if you look just at Volkswagen are currently retooling 16 of their factories to build electric vehicles. They are bringing out 33 models of electric vehicles between now and 2023. That's 4 years' time. They're going to have 33 models of electric vehicles for sale.
So that's in the sort of more personal market. What about the commercial market, Alex? What are the sort of differences in there compared to your sort of everyday car?
Yeah, so for passenger cars, when you're selling an EV, you're selling an experience. It's sleek, it's sexy, it's fun, and it makes you feel good because you're helping the environment. For commercial vehicles, ultimately you're selling savings. You're selling an easier way of doing business. You're selling a cheaper way of doing business.
Savings are important, but not always is it the case that if you change a fan for a cargo bike, you're cheaper. But for our customers, commercial customers, the image is always also very important. They want to be the first in their segment to drive electric, to start using new means of transportation.
Tom, there's much talk about mobility last mile solutions. Why is this important, and what developments can we expect to see, and who might be the leaders in that area?
God knows is probably the short answer to that, to be honest. The last mile micromobility section is really confused at the moment, or it's a really confusing landscape. And then you see in places like India, the little tuk-tuks, the little three-wheeler things, those are starting to go electric big time now at about a rate of about 11,000 new electric ones a week. And it's because of cost reasons, because it's much cheaper to run those on electricity than it is to run them on petrol. And of course, that's great for noise pollution, it's great for air pollution, it's great for the drivers because it's a lot cheaper, and it's great for things like the railway stations, which is often typically where they operate from, because the railway stations now have a new source of revenue because they put chargers in the railway stations so that the drivers can charge the tuk-tuks while they're waiting for the passengers to come on the trains.
Wow, that's fascinating stuff. Rodrigo, safety is an issue, not only in our cities but also in rural areas, and not only for driverless vehicles but also for this last mile micromobility we're talking about. What role can advanced materials play in delivering safer mobility?
One thing that we've been working quite a lot, for example, is the discussion and questions that raised to us, okay, in the future when we're gonna reach level 5, so the car can be made by paper. And then we do not believe that, because we see still a brand behind that. You still have to protect the consumer. For sure, the combination with better material, advanced materials with AI and also autonomous driving can be a very good combination to reduce fatality. And one of the matter is how to improve the material, real material in cars, trucks, buses, and also in bikes. And also creating the mindset of the consumer driving better.
And safety is obviously going to be the big question, isn't it, with autonomous cars? How do you even start do you think, to deal with the whole responsibility kind of side of things?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I think it was in 2015 the CEO of Volvo said that if an autonomous Volvo has an accident, that Volvo will assume responsibility. And I think that was a very brave thing of him to say. And I think it tells where the direction the market has to go. It tells that, you know, if cars are level 5 fully autonomous, then the responsibility for any accident has to lie with the manufacturer, not with the person sitting in the car, who are just sitting in the car and not driving, by definition. Yeah. I think it'll come. I think a time will come when we do get to level 5 that if you do own a car, which many people won't at that point, but if you do own a car and you ring your insurance company and you say, no, I want to drive the car myself, they'll go, well, that's this whole other policy, clunk, you know, which will be far more expensive.
Interesting. Yeah, any thoughts on that sort of side of autonomous?
You see stories about the guy, you know, reading a newspaper while driving a Tesla on the 101 in California. Those things are happening today, but the kind of the moral quandaries, the higher level conceptual issues that we face going from level 4, where somebody's sitting behind the wheel and maybe they're watching Netflix, maybe they're reading a newspaper, but they're still at the wheel, to go from that to turning my truck, car, whatever it is, into kind of a sofa that happens to have 4 wheels is a totally different question, and there are major concerns with that. You have to figure out how to make sure that that vehicle can talk to all other vehicles in the same language, and not only all other vehicles, all other objects that might be in the way, in the road. So again, on the commercial side, we're pretty hesitant to see a world where, in the near future, where a driver is completely removed from the vehicle.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Another really, really interesting discussion.